show. It's accuracy, authenticity, and listening, not the broadcast medium.
This is Arthur Yancek.
All right, we are live. We're going to give this another shot. Just a couple of days ago, I was talking live with one of our favorite guests, Richard Allen Miller. Speaking of boom, somebody crashed into a power station or segment, whatever it is, in our town, knocking out the power. So it was about 15 minutes, and then boom, we were done. So I still have it up there. You can go watch the first 15 minutes, but we thought it was just a good idea to start all over again. Same topic today, Undersea Volcano off the coast, west coast. Looking like it's going to go boom. Since we talked about that, I saw a lot of other articles coming out on that. It's apparently getting traction. Also, how does this fit the larger picture of Earth changes? Will the volcano going off be part of a greater shifting of the Earth, pole shift, landmass shift, etc., which brings some of the old pictures, the maps, which I have queued up from 2012 and the Earth shifts back then. You know, we're not on the Earth's timetable, right? Earth's on its own timetable. We can come up with 2012 and we can come up with all this stuff, but the Earth's going to do what it's going to do, as well as the sun, and we're here for the ride. We're but ethereal moment in the Earth's history, let alone the sun. So when it's off a few years, that's like a blink, atomic second, millisecond in the life of this solar system. So Richard Allen Miller is here. Let me get him back and see if we can just keep the ball going. Here we go. Richard Allen Miller, I think you're here.
I am.
There we go.
Because no matter where you go, there you are.
So what I mentioned before we started, just to kind of start over again, because I don't know where we left off, and not to try and make people watch the other one, but I do have, and I will be showing them, I do have some articles and maps set out talking about what you're talking about, the volcano on the West Coast and potential Earth changes. So tell us about this volcano over there. What's your...
It started back in 1974 when I was working out of the Pentagon. I found that there was a magnetic pole shift that occurred every 12,000 years. And I couldn't find anything written after 12,000 years. And I had to work with geology. That's how thorough the pole shift is. Now, the study that I did back then had a 3 sigma error coefficient. That means there was a 99.9975% probability of the event occurring. And what's occurred at this moment, we're due between somewhere, the wiggle room, even with that level of accuracy, could be 2025, not 2025, 2054. I mean, you know, it's within the next 20 years. And the Earth almost did a pole shift 2 years ago when the core of Earth stopped twice, and then it started spinning back up in the correct direction. All the planets in the solar system, except Mercury and Earth, have shifted their pole. That means it's a regular thing that happens in our solar system. And the sun has even shifted its pole. Did that last year. That's why we're getting all these weird anomalies off the sun right now. And it's all part of being in what I would call a petri dish, where they clean house and they start all over where we've been here before, and like the Vermana and aircraft and all the rest of it. And then we're taken right back down into caveman level and have to rebuild our concepts of society and everything like that back up again. Now, the volcano off of Crescent City doesn't even have a name, and it goes off every so often regularly, except this time it's getting ready to go off. It has risen the ocean floor. What should I do? Just ignore that, I guess.
You can answer it and tell them a call back. That's fine.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We're relaxed here.
I'm on national radio. Please call me back.
I mean, you are Richard Allen Miller.
Well, yes,
so
but
that phone's got to be off the hook all the time. So
it's terrible. And worse, it's all these artificial voices, Hi, how are you doing today? And I go, yeah, never mind that. And any guy's verging on senior abuse. That's what I'd call it. I've had 10 of them so far today alone. 10. I've had as many as 50 in one day. I can't believe it. You get in these mailing lists like on the internet, and never mind, I'm tensioning. Okay, so this volcano, while it goes off every regular, is on an extremely delicate fault line on the Pacific plate. And if it really blows big time, like we expect it to, like Yellowstone, I mean, it's going to leave a big hole. And what it'll do is drop everything on I-5 west. Will disappear from Alaska all the way down to Peru. That's how bad it will be. Alaska, last epoch, Alaska was connected to Siberia. And now it's not. There's an ocean between it. That's how bad it is. The United States itself probably be cut in half when the Missouri and the Mississippi flood, connecting the Great Lakes and up even further up near, there's a, what's up north of you, up just north of you, besides
Wisconsin?
the Great, I'm sorry?
Wisconsin?
Hudson, yeah. The Hudson Bay, yeah. It'll it'll go all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico.
I got that picture up now on for the viewers. I was looking at that. It looks like where I'm at, I'm about 40 miles southwest of Chicago, and I might have some new beachfront property after this happens. I'm looking at it, and it might just be close enough that I can kick back and look over the new.
Now, you're not going to be able to kick back or kick anything when that thing goes off, because in order to have that beachfront property, what do you think happens to the land around you?
I guess it goes up or down. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. That.
And worse, it's going up, it's going down, it's going sideways. You'll be lucky to survive. And if you did survive, then you have zombies that are out of food.
Right.
And it's going to, you'll have looting, all of that kind of stuff going on, because who cares, right? Now, I don't know what's actually going to happen. I'm just a physicist. I'm good at what I do, but I have to tell you, physics will never actually get us anywhere, because it's like Simon says, I can go halfway to the door. I'm
looking at the map, and Oregon, for the most part, is underwater, except for the northeast section. There's something tipping out of it.
Yeah, there's in California's gone.
Yeah, Nevada's completely underwater. Utah, almost 100% underwater.
Well, that's because of Yellowstone. When
those mountains are pretty tall, so it's going to all sink down. It's all going to collapse. Is that how it's going to work?
Oh, it's going to explode and disappear.
Oh,
into the air, like what you call ash.
Oh,
Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens are active again, and when that goes with Mount Olympus, Seattle will cease to exist. That's according to Edgar Cayce. There'll be a small island that pops up, and that'll be called New Jerusalem, as a metaphor.
I got Mark in the chat room. He said, I guess he's showing Chet Snow is the map I'm showing. I don't really know.
Chet Snow, there's Scallion, there's the Navy maps that I did. There's others. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. Our best guesses. But when you realize that most of LA, for example, the Bay, has underground caves right there on the ocean side, what do you think is going to happen with all those caves, things like that? With that kind of a structural movement, everything's going to collapse and change. And high ground, yeah. But even then, high ground doesn't mean you're going to be safe. Every single thing has got its own issues.
Yeah, I mean, if the high ground is going to be shaking like and not stirred, it's going to be a little tough to be on it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and worse, it's like who knows what the mountain's going to do next? Become a high plains desert? What like Nevada? I don't know.
Here's the Navy map of future America. It's a little different than the other one. I'm definitely gone on this one, but there's a lot more Oregon on that map than was on the other one. Yeah, Illinois is gone at this point.
I found, I have bunkers everywhere, and that's what I've been doing. Was with Matt Stein, we were setting up bunkers for the military and upper end police forces and so on for when the tragedy or event occurs. Nobody knows, but I'm going to suggest it will be that volcano off of Crescent City that will be the keynote for the West Coast. The East Coast, I don't know. I don't know that as well. Did you know you can go from Maine all the way down to Florida without ever coming above ground?
Above ground?
Yeah, it's all interconnected bunkers.
Oh, bunkers. I got you.
Yeah, and caves and so on. In the Midwest, Dennis Kucinich has 8 different bunker situations, but they're not interconnected. There's very rare. They're underground bunkers, but they're not interconnected like they are here on the West Coast. On the West Coast, ours start out around Coos Bay in Oregon and go right on down into California into the Trinity Alps, about as far as, Redding and that far. And all of that will have everything's interconnected. I cannot believe how sophisticated some of the optics are in these new labs. Out in the Applegate here, I have optics that can look at the color of someone's eye from space. That's incredible, weather permitting, of course. Bunkers are one way of protecting. I particularly like high mountains and the Cascades. They start up in Canada and become either the Rockies or the coastal ranges. They come down through Washington and Montana. And those mountains on the east side are the safest places in North America that I can determine at this point. West side of the Cascades are more rugged and have a lot more wet or snow. And the west side, where I lived in Omak area, we would get on the east side, where Spokane and that part of the state is. They'll get snow, but it'll be gone shortly. It doesn't have the extreme cold weather that West Coast does. And then we have the Japanese current that comes in off of into Seattle, keeps everything mellow and bland. That's all going to change because when Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Olympus go off, and they're all 3 actives right now with that volcano off of Crescent City, that means there may be an event shortly. I don't know.
The actual underwater volcano isn't really an issue. It's what it's attached to it, if you will.
Yeah, it's on a fault line, and that magma that it's building up is enough that it will shift that Pacific plate. And when it does, everything changes.
I was quite impressed by him. Being from Chicago all my life, the hills aren't even impressive. But one thing I noticed is when I went across to Idaho, to Tip, Idaho, and I'm looking across it, and I go, you know what? This didn't happen over millions of years. This happened in about 20 minutes. It just went ba-booey, and everything went up. To me, it was obvious. So if you reverse that, what we're talking about here, it could just go down in 20 minutes, Yeah,
the Cascades are a newer range than the Rockies. The Rockies are softer, if you know what I'm trying to say by soft. They don't have the jagged parts that you'll see in the Cascades, and sureness and so on. And the Rockies are going to be part of it because when Yellowstone goes off, it's going to take out a piece of Montana. It's going to take out, a little piece of, Utah is going to be gone.
So all this talk about the big one on San Andreas is really not, that's all going to be underwater. I mean, that's not really an issue then, right?
Well, what do you think happens underwater when a bunch of cold water hits lava?
It probably cools off very slowly and nicely, right?
No, it explodes.
I
Yeah, good luck with that. No, it blows up like a bomb.
mean, because when you see the movies and you talk about it, they're going to be the big shake and all this stuff's going to happen. It's going to be a lot bigger than that,
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot bigger than that. Yes, you'll have your tsunamis that will be your 20-foot, 50-foot tsunamis.
I mentioned to the people in the chat room, if they want to ask a question, if they just make it in caps so I can find it, because I have to do a few things at once here. And I have, thank you, Jesus says, is this from Juan de Fucas related to the San Andreas?
Is what is related?
Is this from Juan de Fuca, DE and then space?
Yeah, Juan de Fuca is a series of islands off north of Washington going into Canada, and he's asking, is it related to
San Andreas?
No, that's a different plate. There will be. Those two will talk to each other. The Pacific plate goes all the way up to Alaska, and what he's talking about is in Orcas Island. And there's a series. There's the inside straits and the outer straits of Juan de Fuca. The inner straits are a bunch of islands, San Juan Islands, and then up further north would be the Indian coastal tribes going into Alaska. But on the outer straits, that's where you're going to have some serious action, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I want to say to the audience that I got a call. We're talking about doing the show, so Richard Miller sent out emails about some of his stuff that he's talking about, and he said to me, like as a friend, I got to tell you, you got to get out of there.
Yeah, it's true. It's going to happen. That's one of the reasons I went out and bought a mobile home, because while I like to live in a home, there's a new movie out, Mad Max movie that came out 27 years after Raggedy Man and Thunderdome, and it's called Fiora. And the movie's good. It's interesting, blah, blah, blah. But what's important about that movie is that it describes and demonstrates why, even with the most stablest of bunkers, you want to have mobility, just because, to be able to pick up and move when you want to. And not talking like a nomad, but when I move, I have a friend. He's got 3 sons. He's got 3 aircraft, and what he does, they're 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old, and they all fly the 2 single engine, and the older one flies the twin engine. And what they do is they set up perimeter when I'm moving a caravan from one bunker to another, where I might have 20 or 30 mobile homes wanting to move as a caravan, and like in the movies. Every single bunker that I know of has some issue. I like Telluride, but like, for example, on the east side, over on Dulce, New Mexico, what's wrong there is they got nuclear power plants. And if we have a shake like that, what do you think is going to happen to the radiation?
I think they will shut down very calmly. And yeah,
I don't think they're going to be able to do that. It's going to be like Isle Island, and there'll be, or Chernobyl, and there will be hot spots on the earth that are uninhabitable.
Yeah, I every year I get a thing in the mail because I'm within 10 miles of a nuclear power plant. I forgot the name of it. It starts with a D. And so they on there, it has a evacuation policy, and it's got the rings, and we're in the 10-mile range, which is the innermost ring.
Yeah.
So
I live down in Richland, Washington, where they have a bunch of power plants like that. And, it's just, it's going to happen. How bad and when, I don't know.
Lucic McDonald, I guess. I can't, I'm not great at reading names. What about the newest fault line found Canada to Vancouver Island now.
Those are all going to be sifting. I don't think BC is very safe. Alberta has the Cascades right there, and my best bunkers are up north of Winnipeg, not Winnipeg, Edmonton, which is at the north end of Canada, and my bunkers go into the territories up there that are mostly ocean and islands. And I have some pretty solid bunkers up there that look like they're going to do well. But again, when you're getting close to the North Pole and you realize it's going to shift and now become the South Pole, what do you think is going to happen up there? Yeah, exactly. You just yours. And what did witness it, there's nothing written on what happened. Your emerald tablets and all these stones and things like that. The Greeks started 11,200 years ago. That's the deal.
Yeah, here we go. I'm looking at this map. Now, I'm not saying this map is the map, right? I just have a few to look at. And it does have ocean is all underwater. But again, it's going to jostle around. I don't think nothing's going to sit stable, right? I mean, it's all going to get it's all going to be a big shake, right?
That's correct. When Yellowstone goes, that's going to take a lot of land out. It'll be a giant hole. And Seattle, when Mount Rainier goes off, Seattle won't exist. Buried in 1902 when we had that big earthquake in Seattle. That was called Skid Row. That's where they skid the logs down into Puget Sound and Elliott Bay. And I can tell you, Seattle is very goosey in terms of underground and what's going to happen. Now, they have been doing some artificial undergrounds in Seattle also. I'm familiar with some of those that are doing. And I can tell you they have these special diggers that make these underground caves and interconnecting. And all along I-5 is, and that goes right down through the center of Seattle.
All right, we have, let's see, Mark is in Jasper, Alberta, so he's looking at that. We have Karen Ann is in Edmonton, Alberta. I got some Canadians here. Actually, over the years, it's Feet to the Fire to be isn't irrelevant at the moment, but a lot of Canadian listeners to the show. Okay, we have a question. Thoughts on the DEU fires in Alberta and BC by Edmonton?
Yeah,
Are they direct energy weapons fires? You said,
I think they're prepping us. I think that there's with intent, like your so-called power failure yesterday or 2 days ago when we were doing radio. That might not have been just a quote accident. It might have been done. Well, I'm noticing, because I put out a newsletter on conspiracy now, or I'm going about to. I've got a couple of women up in Winnipeg that are right on the thing, and I'm going to put up called the Daily Conspiracy. Fighting, like Trump is acting like very much like Hitler did in 1929 and 1930 with Germany. Now, he went over the edge. I don't know what Trump's going to do, but it scares me because war is
not like this, right? So I'm not saying I would do this, but his kind of bombastic, well, then we'll just take Greenland, to do. So I have no fears of that. In fact, I'm looking at the war is going to stop because everybody is, look what's happening just recently. They stopped the Pakistan war. You have now Trump pretty much given a haircut to Netanyahu, which he could use one. And you have him doing the same thing within Ukraine. Going to have, now you got both presidents are going to, if he doesn't do something, we're all lost, right? So
we're already lost anyway, because all our wars, all of them, have been on not other people, but that isn't what I see happening in Christianity. And it's the Muslims and the Arabs. It's war. How did Gecko put it? Greed is good. than the movie Wall Street. And I can tell you that I'm not interested in going to war with anything. What I'd like to do is, like in the movie when Jack Nicholson goes up to the alien and Mars attacks, and he says, "Why can't we all just get along?" And the alien, and the alien's got a little tear going down his eye, a laugh, blows him away. I can tell you that there's going to be some serious repercussions when all of this land stuff starts to happen. Look at what's happening to Europe right now. And by the way, Ukraine, just FYI, is the only source food for Russia, like taking out Kansas would be for the United States. And what's going on over there, I probably will never really know the truth of what actually happened because of, false programming and whatever, media. But I can tell you, none of it is what you think it is. It's way, 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 way uglier. And it's a shame. I wished we had honest journalism.
Going back to Karen Ann in the chat, thoughts on the CMA solar flares that just knocked out electronics in some areas. And Mark mentioned that the CME stopped radio in the Far East. So now, obviously, the way I look at things is the sun is like going to affect Earth, not Earth affect the sun. And so how does all that stuff play into what we're talking about here? Is this one of the causes for all of this action?
The sun has already reversed its pole. What do you think that's going to do in terms of radiation that it gives off the sun that hits the Earth with a bunch of sugar ants on Gaia? That's what I see man as, like sugar ants. Gaia is basically can be seen as a life form in that the first and third largest life form on Earth is mycelium up in Oregon, and then the third one is up in British Columbia as mycorrhizae and mycelium. The second largest life form is down in Telluride. It's an aspen grove. And the sun has the heliosphere, and the fact that Saturn has the same geometry I used to take a bunch of Russian NASA scientists to Mars would suggest our solar system is also a life form. And if you don't think NASA doesn't want to know where that wormhole goes, I'm not.
Yeah. Now, somebody said in the chat room here, Shane, I guess that Dr. Ram, I love your work. Could it be what's going on being part of the, quote, the gathering that Bob Monroe talked about?
Of it. And my physics, as good as it gets, can't get me there. Shortest distance between 2 points, I can prove with tensor math the Earth's flat. Which one is it? And believe this or not, the correct answer is yes. That's how limited our concept of space is and time. And now I'm having to do the same thing with my holographic universe, because when you go from an analog into a digital system where you digitize it, we're going from a wave into a particle. What happens is you inject an uncertainty. And the more you know about one thing, the less you know about the other, and you can't get there from here. And so space and time, but 2 arms and 2 legs, including little green men from Mars, is carbon-based life form. And when you talk about reptilian, tall grays, Nordics, whatever, all these different hosts of different kinds of new, in a dream state right now. And actually, lucid dreaming has got more content to reality than consciousness does. And now there's a brand new article came out today talking about lucid dreaming being a different kind of consciousness. Now, what does that mean? Well, I don't know. I'm going to try to presume a concept using my DNA as a resonant cavity oscillator. And what it's going to do is inject the fact that a holographic system is limited, like measuring something in space-time is limited. Information, well, that's information, right? No. Information is not what you think it is. There's a theorem that states that if you have enough information to ask a coherent question, you have enough information to answer it. That means that the answer is contained in the framework of the question itself. So what does that mean? Well, it means you can't get there from here. That's why God gave us two brains, not one. And we have cavitation in the middle, ever be a theory of everything. I don't think we're getting closer to the truth. I think imagination is reality. When you see
well, if you want to hear I don't want to use the word theory because I technically it's not that strong. But what I'm saying is the way I look at the way it is looking at quantum mechanics, for example. It seems to me that the physical bridge between your left and right brain, there's you got your imagination, creative type, and your logical type. To me, I think the universe is similar, where you have this on the other side of the wall, if you will. You have the creative part of it, the imagination part, and then it comes through, pops into our logical part, which would be the created the universe. It comes through in the quantum field, so you can't just like go from one to the other. There's this process between taking the imagination and bringing it into reality. And I think where you get the quantum mechanics is the bridge from outside our universe to inside the universe. It seems that the spiritual world materializes through there.
What do you think your mind is? What is the mind?
Now, I'm maintaining...
I don't know. I'm going to be writing about it. Basically, magic with a C is hairy in your pocket. It's sleight of hand. There's something else going on, and what you're trying to do is isolate the variable to see how he did his trick. And magic with a K is sleight of mind, where you use your belief system as a tool rather than absolute. In other words, I don't hold something to be true because it changes all the time. With new data, new concepts, there's personal growth in terms of what I believe is correct, and I'm getting not closer to the truth. What I'm getting is closer to myself. And what made us God's favorite was choice. And that's why I would say there are probably as many religions on earth as there are human beings. And the reason you go to one church over another was for fellowship, where you seek out a group of people that have values that you aspire toward. And your mind, belief system, is a tool to help you achieve your goal. And my beliefs change all the time. Now, why don't I use that as a tool then, rather than an absolute and I'm right and you're wrong? It doesn't work like that, because what's right for you may not be right for me. And that's why God said, or Jesus actually said, the only person you can judge is yourself. You can't judge another. You're not them. And what made us favored was all the different choices. And what I'm going to suggest is a multiverse is all the different choices that could have happened today where I didn't do radio.
Right.
They all happened. And they're contained in the proton cloud. And what I'm doing right now is I'm existing in one of a billion different ones of me. And what makes me limited is my options of choice.
All right. So when you said everything happened in this is my idea of the wave collapsing into the points. When the decisions are made, you made the choice, I made the choice to do the radio show today. Then those infinite things that were there, we chose this one, so here we are, right? In that particular
Well, then there's two-faced. It flips the coin. He's two minds of it.
And this is where, the old saying where two or three are gathered my name, so I'm in the midst of them. If you have a giant group of people on the same page, that's pretty creative. That's a lot of power there, which explains why the powers that be in this world got to keep us all fighting and keep us apart.
The power of the group is greater than the sum of
just imagine if say 4 billion people decided to sit down and say we want peace, and put all that creative energy into it. I mean, how do you fight that? It would come like a wave into here.
Why would you want to? I mean,
right. Well, I'm talking about the people who want to control things would not want that to happen.
Well, so that's Castaneda. You have fear, the polarity, where you started seeing things more clearly. That became an enemy. And then, of course, what I currently am enjoying, old age. Too old to do anything about it. I love Castaneda.
Yeah.
My non-local mind book. I actually have a picture that Peter First and I took down in Mexico when we went down looking for Don Juan. We didn't find Don Juan. Picture of that in my non-local mind. It opens up a chapter on that, and it's they glide. It's really interesting. There's all these different constructs or altered states, and I gave the SEAL program 8 altered states, and it turned them into Supermen. 1 altered state. You can change your perception of time with breath control. Yeah, I do it at the YMCA now, where I'll do a couple of laps, and then as I let myself fall back into the water backward, and then I listen to my breathing, and everything slows down. And when you're in that state, you can do things you cannot do in normal conscious waking state. For example, it took their martial arts to a paranormal level because they had the precision doing everything in slow motion, even though it was normal speed. What is more accurate? There's an altered state. That's the ESP book I wrote when I worked with Ed Mitchell at Mission Control in 1971. That study in 19 brought in 2 orders of magnitude. Your ability in guessing is 4.
I see the pump. I'm holding this thing, and I let it go. And I go, I'm going to see how close I got. I walked around. It was 100.000. I just had a wave of fear go through me at that moment. I don't want to say the word fear, but I don't know how to say it. It was like this big whoosh went through me, and I went like, oh my God. What are the odds of me doing that by accident?
Where nothing happens by chance.
Right.
And you've been doing that fuel thing probably long enough that you had a sense of Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2.
Well, actually, I didn't. I wasn't even counting it, right? I was just kind of, and so I tried it again. Of course, I was all worried about doing it right, so naturally I didn't do it again. But it just proved to me that you can. I mean, I've done this too, where I've had a bunch of mathematics to do, and rather than do the math, I just wrote down the number, right? And when I did the math, that was the number. That's another thing that kind of spooked me out. It's like, how would I know that, right? It's like I looked at the math, and it would boom in my head, boom, it comes out. So I know I have this stuff in me, but something's blocking it, I guess, for me doing it. I don't know. Faith in myself. I don't know how you want to say it.
I'm on national radio. Thank you. So, with all of that said, what would happen if 8 altered states turn the SEAL program into Supermen, but it's tools in a toolbox where you can do something in that state that you can't do over here? It's really exciting to release your immune system's response to a toxin in the drug. What drugs are basically toxins that have a chemistry that's very similar to, but slightly different than neurotransmitter. The one that most people are probably familiar with is dimethyltryptamine. In crabgrass, you smoke it with a glass pipe and you get high, is 5-alpha, dimethyltryptamine. But what happens when you smoke that pipe, or marijuana or whatever, your immune system goes into red alert, and it overproduces a similar neurotransmitter that is similar to the chemistry that is trying to take over your body. And that's N-hyphen dimethyltryptamine. And using those neurotransmitters and what I discovered with cymatics, which is the diamond body, I was able to take 12 NASA physical. It's not astral projection and remote viewing. It's not that at all. It's more like Kashjaneda again, where you're in bilocation. You're in two locations at one time. And man may, whatever, can only do one at a time, whereas God is everywhere, all at once, at every time. And that is accurately shown in a movie called Lucy, where she gets a psychedelic drug and something happens to her, and then she becomes omnipotent, i.e., everywhere at every moment. And bilocation is done, it's very complicated. It's hard to do because you have a specific geometry, and then you have it changing correctly in your mind's eye. And what that's doing is it's creating a wormhole. And the fact that Saturn had that exact geometry is it's astounding. You realize that our solar system has the Oort cloud as its covering protection, like we have the Van Allen belt. It's interesting to look at things like that, because then you start to realize that there's way more going on than we haven't even begun to think about yet. And just about the time we're starting to think we're getting there, they wipe the petri dish clean.
Reset. See, I mentioned before about this quantum and the physical and all that. What it seems like to me is that when you're talking about geometry and opening wormholes and all that, if we wanted to physically, using physics on this side, open up a wormhole, I mean, the energy is unbelievably impossible to get. You'd have to Dyson sphere suns to get the energy and so on. But if you're going to do it in your mind, which is connected to the other side, that's where you can start doing things over here that are, quote, impossible, because you're doing them from there.
Now you're getting the big picture. That is correct. You can change the movie.
And the key is to get over in there to do it. And I think there is protocol or barriers of spiritual growth or whatever to be able to get over there. So that otherwise you end up destroying the universe or whatever. So this is what I think the dark side wants to do, and call it CERN, call it other things, is to try to be able to get in there with the wrench, if you will, and screw around with the connection rather than doing it the right way, which would be a more of a spiritual way.
Unfortunately, there's something else even more creepy going on, because when you realize that Homo neanderthalis was a more evolved species than Homo sapien, it had 3 rings in the DNA, not 2. What does that mean? Well, it means that that entity could experience 5 dimensions where man is only limited to 4. And when you where is it? We find some parts of it in DNA down in Africa, but in terms of an entity, it's no longer existing, and it was more evolved than Homo sapien. So I have to say, man does not have free will. Free will would imply full disclosure. You don't have full disclosure, so how could you have free will? You have true will. What you do know, you try to do the best in your judgment. But again, imagine what Gaia must think of man and plastic infused in her kitchen, koshens, where she does her cooking, with our so-called better living through chemistry. I mean, it's crazy what we're doing. And that's probably another reason why they clean the petri dish. And I have no idea what that actually means, but I have a sense that I'm going to probably witness it.
Yeah. We do have a question here. I'm going to have to read. I have a dyslexia issue, so when I start reading these things, the words move around.
That's because you're a biker.
This is from Shane. Are the Earth changes constant, and our ability manifest things in this life /timeline separate, allowing us to be surprised and add an extra dimension into the game?
Well, they put 10 dimensions in string theory. And superstring is when you add an 11th wormhole interconnecting the 10 dimensions. That's superstrings. And the math that I'm going to use to describe the multiverse will be called knot theory, K-N-O-T. I'm a little Boy Scout. I'm going to tie knots in all those strings. Now, no, it's called knot theory because it doesn't. It's like when you take you go from the neck to the shoulder, you tie a knot, and you go down to the elbow and you tie a knot. That's called taking your measure. That's where you tie knots at different breakpoints to describe an individual, or what they call in witchcraft taking their measure. And knot theory is the same thing. And I'm going to be using a virtual form probably of Kaufman's knot theory. And imagine my hangman's knot is going to have at least 13 turns to make sure that neck snaps. And well, I'm just kidding, but you're getting the metaphor of how knot theory goes beyond string theory in terms of the options of what we call the multiverse. And the multiverse is contained in what is called the proton cloud. The proton cloud is that space around the DNA when a wave becomes a particle. And that's where all the different U's and the different universes are hanging out. And why you're at this level working this one, well, that's just one of you. And another one is on Mars, like I did, and I connected with it and was there on Mars as well. It's easier to do wormholes in places that are further away than closer. Doing it to Mars is a lot more difficult than doing it to Alpha Centauri. It's like there's a relationship of space and time, in terms of our constructs of doing something close, like next door, like going next door is way more difficult than going to Mars.
Maybe the little bend in the wormhole is too close and it kinks.
Yeah, well, if you were to see the wormhole, I can send you several gifs of what they call stargates. That's my geometry. And it's called a stargate, but I call it a wormhole. And I'll send those to you to upload with the conversation so that people have a visual. Be very careful, though. The one that I'm going to give you, if you stare at it too long, you might actually create a wormhole. Well, who knows where it goes?
Right. I mean, to me, that's one of the problems with wormholes is, provided you can actually create one and then have it stable, where does it come out?
Well, there it is. Kind of like shamanism, where the shaman puts his consciousness in that part, and then full consciousness is when you're doing it with full awareness. That's where it's really at. Because the shaman doesn't know what he's doing. I taught shamanism in the early years after I'd studied with Merciliati and went through Hole in the Wall and studied with Strong Eagle and, did a bunch of stuff in that area as an active participant. Shamanism is basically a psychically unstable individual that receives the call to religious life. And as a result, this is a direct quote from Gowan. John Curtis Gowan wrote, "Trance, art, and creativity. Trance states are the prototaxic, parataxic, and syntactic modes of consciousness, which I talk about in my earlier works with power tools." Pollock, when I was with the University of Washington in the early 1971, before he even started his structural water. He was my lead in anesthesiology. And I worked there as a physicist. And I can tell you, structured water, for example, there's many forms of structured water, and structured water on Mars is different than structured water on Earth. That has to do with geometry, Coriolis forces, Schumann's resonance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's other forms of water that are like H709, the free radical ion. That's a clustered water that comes off on a waterfall. And that is really beneficial. You breathe some of that, you repair things in your body. Structured water is what...
Many years ago, I had the inventor, CEO of, Penta water on. Penta water, and he explained how he structured it. What was his idea? Was the water crashing onto the rocks off the ocean, and that bubbling, frothing plasma that comes from that crashing of it and so forth. He got the idea to structure the water, and he sent me, like, I don't know how many cases of it when I was doing the show, and I did all kinds of tests with it. It boiled different. It tasted different. The water out of my mouth, just going to another place in time. What all those variables you mentioned. I mean, look at the snowflakes. How each snowflake is structured different.
Uniquely, yeah. And it gets better and weirder when you realize that's just a very simple molecule. Imagine all molecules behave the same way, or they have different forms of it. That means that every single is different. Down near absolute zero is quite different. And if you drink cold water, it goes right directly into the urine, whereas warm water goes in.
I'm watching. I have to be looking up at our stream. Its stream is erratically going up and down. So I'm wondering if it might be a time to.
Because no matter where you go.
Oh, no, it's going back up again. I don't know why it's varying, because I have a very good connection. Normally I do. But, you got the Richard Allen Miller curse that wherever you are, they are. So who knows?
Because no matter, they're here. Yeah.
So how does the whole concept of structured water play out in the earth changes? I mean, structuring.
That's going to be a whole another region of areas. Can you imagine what it must be like on Titan with their ocean there?
Well, the stream is fluctuating real wildly, so I think I want to call it a day here before we get thrown off the internet. We've only been about a little over an hour. That's pretty short for us, but it's going up from, 100.
It's been a pleasure. Feel free to do me anytime you'd like. If you get bored and you want to know something, call me up, or you can call me Al, but don't call me late.
Yeah. But maybe they have some kind of deal when you're on too long. It's like, okay, it's like when you're on network. It's like, okay, we gotta go to a break here. Come on, and then they pull you off the stage with a cane, So.
I know.
Everybody in chat room, any other questions? Last question before we shut down here. Don't forget to send portal pictures. Oh yeah, so we can stare at them. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, you do that. I'll put it in the.
I'll send you those. They're gifts. They're moving.
Okay, I will put that in the description below. And if I do forget, anybody listening, just send me an email. It's beattothefireradio@protonmail.com. Just remind me, because I am not far from being infallible. So
what I'm going to say is the Dichros had written the geometric universe, and what I have done is the dodecahedral universe, and I'll send you a copy of that as well. That's a very interesting paper on the way our universe is actually shaped like a dodecahedron, a diamond. And there's something else going on. I haven't figured it all out yet, but the next books on that would be electromagnetic on the forehead. And I broke a code, and I could release and get any high I wanted just by using electric currents. And what that led me later was associating specific geometries that you can use in your mind's eye and get high. Yeah, which high do you want? Wow, man, totally gnarly. I mean, it's possible. The thing is, it's not about the high. It's about the fact that when you're in that altered state, the laws of physics are different, and the universe and the way the universe is, and you can do things in those states you cannot do, like your altered state. We're guessing, and you're guessing. If you go to that state, your guessing is better than any other place there is. If you go to that state, you can have the strength of 10. And if you go to that state of it, in other words, you're able to do things in different altered states that you can't do with consciousness. And then the third book is called Yogatronics. And that's when you take the concept of cymatics and your neurotransmitters, and you can't do it in space. When I was at Mission Control, and what's going to happen is how toxic it is out in normal, what we call space. Realize that that's a construct, and that we have a relationship now where space was the first defined as astrology, and then it went to astronomy, and then it changed to cosmobiology. All of that affects man and the geometry and its biology. A woman, when she's born, an engram is set in on moves on Earth to somewhere else, a lunar sex cycle of the female. You have a form of birth control, natural birth control. Things are changing. Our constructs of time now are different. If I were to go with the Saturn I project, just going into space at near light speed, I would come back without aging.
What I'm telling people is I'm going to upload this video from my local copy in case the errors are coming through. They can watch it on one of the other channels from my local copy. So that's one of the good things about doing this is I do have a error-free copy. So I don't know how it's buffering. It was fine in the beginning, so but I will have that up there. There's all the links there. And for you, Richard Allen Miller, we have your website. Let me get to it. Boom. RichardAllenMiller.com. I like the website. Nice, pretty stuff going on there. And if you look up at the top here, you'll see all the links. Metaphysics.
Than anywhere else. I'm going to go down there. Borello was head of Brazilian Secrets, retired, and he married his nurse that was taking care of him, and he's going to try to bring me down to Paraguay. He lives in Brazil. But if you ever come out to the West Coast, it would be very cool because I could use somebody setting up my studio for me. Do my own radio.
All right. I'm still walking.
Yeah.
I've been in the hospital and fell off 7 feet off a ladder. But here I am. I'm still alive and kicking. So
very cool what you do. Breaker 17. Come on.
Yeah. Well, God bless you, Richard. It's good talking to you. I'll give you a call. We'll do these on a more regular basis now that I'm back in the swing of things.
He's back.
I know people like to chat along and ask questions. That's why I like doing all that. But like I said before, I will upload the local copy to the other places. And I will mention that too, so that if someone's going to start to watch this, they may choose to go to the other places.
Yeah.
And we'll see if I get kicked off YouTube. I mean, YouTube deleted, I don't know, dozens of my shows over the last 8 years because it either was dangerous content or it broke the C word and the V word, and that took off a lot.
Yeah, if you think you've got problems now, will you see what AI is going to do?
Yeah, well, all right. Well, God bless you. Take care. It is Richard Allen Miller. He's alive and kicking and doing well. One of the few people I actually got to meet in person twice. People on the show. I was up for any kind of.
I would love to come.
If you had a workshop, it'd be great to get you here before the place goes underwater. One more time. So.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, take care. We'll see you next time. God bless you.
I'll send you some assets.
All right. Sounds good. Bye.